Hey everyone, let's talk about how will Bitcoin adapt to a future where the scale of Bitcoin is far greater, where there are 100 times, 1,000 times, or even a million times as many users, or let's say 10,000 times as many users as there are today. So the first thing that's super important to understand about money, and there was an entire book written about this called Layered Money, is that money is always in layers. Money has always been in layers. Money will always be in layers. And what that means is that the technology, the level of money that you use to buy a cup of coffee is never the same level of money, the monetary layer that you're using for settling millions of dollars of transactions. So for example, let's walk through what the current system looks like. When I go to a concession stand and buy some Twizzlers, what I am doing is I am paying with a Coinbase debit card. Well, let's talk about the regular system first. Okay, so normally somebody's paying with Venmo or Cash App or a credit card, debit card, whatever they're paying with at a concession stand. So that is one of probably between 4 and 7 layers that money is going to be transmitted in before a final settlement. So when they pay with a credit card, Visa first, aggregates all of those transactions from a day or a week or whatever, and then they settle up on the Visa network between people with Visa account holders, and then all of those people have to settle up with their respective banks, and then eventually all of their banks settle up with each other, and then ultimately their banks settle up with the Federal Reserve. So there's like 4 different layers, and what looks like is happening when you buy Twizzlers at a concession stand is you are transmitting value from yourself to the person on the other end in exchange for the Twizzlers. But what's actually happening behind the scenes is that transaction is not getting final settlement for often weeks and sometimes months. Sometimes it takes even 3 to 6 months before the final transmission of that value has officially taken place. And during that time, the charge can be contested. They could get a charge back. It can be disputed, all this sort of stuff. So the most base layer of the monetary system are called Fedwire and SWIFT. So if you've been following, for example, the war in Ukraine and Russia, one of the things the United States did and other countries did was kick Russia off the SWIFT system, which was basically trying to cut off the Russian banking system from the rest of the world. Well, all of the sort of large transactions are done on either Fedwire or SWIFT. Fedwire, in the last 12 months, settled about $1 quadrillion worth of value. $1 quadrillion. So Fedwire settled $1 quadrillion of value in the last year, and that was at an average of about 5 transactions per second on average. Bitcoin currently, the Bitcoin network processes about 7 transactions per second right now. Like just in the last 10 minutes, it's about 7 transactions a second. But again, that's on the Bitcoin base layer. And what most people don't understand is that transactions for, day-to-day things are almost never going to be on the base layer of a money. Even in the olden days, people tended to not pay for stuff with gold or silver. They would pay for stuff with, banknotes and things like that represented gold or silver that was in a bank somewhere. So in that case, there was 2 layers of money. There was the banknote that represented the gold or silver, and then there was the actual gold or silver somewhere else. And even if they went and redeemed their gold or silver at a bank somewhere, that bank would then go settle up with the other bank to make themselves whole from wherever the person had their gold or silver stored in the first place. So even back in the ages of gold and silver, there were still layers of money. So the right way to think about Bitcoin is as the base layer of the new monetary system. So the question is, okay, if Bitcoin is the base layer of the new monetary system, then what will be built on top of that? And the answer for Bitcoin specifically is the Lightning Network. So the Lightning Network is a payments network that builds on top of the Bitcoin base chain, and it allows for a huge amount of volume of transactions on top of the Bitcoin base layer that then settle periodically to the Bitcoin base layer. So here's the right way to think about that. Is their payment terminal will open a Lightning channel. That Lightning channel will stay open for the entire 5 hours, and it will process a huge number of transactions for Twizzlers, Coca-Cola, and everything people buy. And at the end of that 5 hours, that channel will close, and there will be essentially a single settlement on the Bitcoin base layer, where that settles up with, all the other Lightning channels that were facilitating those transactions. So essentially, instead of 500 while the concession stand was open. And by building money that way, just like with Fedwire, where it settles $1 quadrillion worth of value, but it's only 5 transactions a second on average, the reason it can get away with that is because a huge amount of volume is going through Visa and MasterCard and ACH and numerous other settlement layers, or I shouldn't say settlement layers, but numerous other layers of the monetary system that are handling and batch processing huge amounts of transactions, so that the average to move $1 because, the transfer fee is 25 times the value of the dollar. But the average transaction on Fedwire is large at, I think, $5 million. Because again, it's typically handling huge settlements of, even up to billions of dollars in a single transaction between Bank of America, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and that sort of stuff. Those settlements are happening on Fedwire. So anyway, in the future, what the Bitcoin network will look like, it is the base chain, and there handling the Coinbase debit card. So when you transact with the Coinbase debit card on the Bitcoin network, you are doing transactions. It is Coinbase and Visa are processing those transactions, and every so often they're writing them to the Bitcoin base chain, but that is relatively infrequent. Same on Coinbase. Anytime 2 Coinbase users or 2 Cash App users or 2 or they're moving value off of network, then it will do a major, read or write to the a transaction with the main chain that is in a much larger scale. So anyway, that is how it works. So the question is, why? Why does money have to work that way? And why does Bitcoin have to work that way? Going to scale. You will never have Fedwire able to handle all of the transactions of Visa and MasterCard for a bunch of reasons, but I'll go into why it applies to blockchain technology. So in blockchain technology, there's something called the blockchain trilemma. The blockchain trilemma means there are 3 things you can have. There's 3 things you want, but only 2 things you can have, which is called the trilemma. 3, and then the word dilemma, a trilemma. So two out of 3. You can never have 3 out of 3 because technology won't allow you to have 3 out of 3. So what you want with your base chain, which is what Satoshi Nakamoto chose when he invented Bitcoin, is he chose decentralization and security for the base chain because scalability was the one of the 3 that you could build on a higher level of the monetary layers. You cannot build, people would not trust Bitcoin with $1.2 trillion of value right now on the network if it was not centralized and secure. If it wasn't secure, you would not be convinced you wouldn't lose your money. And if it wasn't decentralized, you wouldn't be, you'd have concerns that someone else would find a way to print more of it or to debase your currency. So the 2 most important things at the base layer are security and decentralization. And so that is what Satoshi Nakamoto chose, which is why each block that is mined every 10 minutes is only 1 megabyte in size. So in order to process a ton of transactions, you're not going to process a ton of transactions in that 1 megabyte block every 10 minutes because it can only hold 3, 5, 4, 5,000 transactions every 10 minutes. And obviously the world is going to transact at a much higher volume than that in the long term. So on your base layer, you want two things. The two of the three that are most important on your base layer are security and decentralization. Your layer above your base layer, it becomes less important. So in the case of Coinbase or Visa, like when I use my Coinbase debit card, Coinbase is a very centralized company. It's like a corporation. It's centralized. So is Visa. But I'm transacting small amounts of money. And so I don't care about, at the higher levels, what I want is security and scalability. Because the decentralization is the one thing I'm willing to give up. Like, I don't care if my purchase of Twizzlers is decentralized. I just don't. It's, it's whatever, $2, $5, whatever it is. That does not need to be a decentralized transaction that's written to an immutable worldwide ledger so that everybody knows I bought some Twizzlers. It just doesn't matter. So at your base layer, what you want is security in decentralization. And at the higher levels of the monetary sort of payment processing, what you want is security and scalability. So you don't ever want to give up security. I mean, just the nature of money is you don't ever want to give up security. So it has to be secure. And on your base layer, you want decentralization so that nobody can print more and so that the currency can't be debased or hijacked or anything like that. And at the higher payment levels, you end up having to trade off some of that decentralization in order to get scalability. And there's no way around that. There's in the world today 20,000 cryptocurrencies, each of which has in some way or another tried to find a way around the blockchain trilemma, and none of them have. So every single blockchain that's attempted to somehow improve on Bitcoin, if they were able to squeeze out any additional scalability, it was 100% at the expense of either security or decentralization. And in the case of base layer money, security and decentralization are so important that you should basically never trade off those two things no matter what. So if somebody's like, hey, I've got a new cryptocurrency, it's only, 20% less secure than Bitcoin, I'm like, no, like why on earth would I want my money to be less secure than Bitcoin? And if somebody was like, hey, I've got a new cryptocurrency and it's just less decentralized than Bitcoin, I'm like, okay, but decentralization was the entire point of the blockchain. Like the entire point of blockchain technology was to create decentralized money. So why would I want to use a technology that is less decentralized than Bitcoin? So what you get back to in the blockchain trilemma is that Bitcoin absolutely nailed decentralization and security in every conceivable way. Just as perfectly as you could possibly engineer a technology, Bitcoin absolutely nailed decentralization and security, which is what you want. And the alternative, again, was to trade off those things for scalability. And Satoshi Nakamoto chose to not do that in order to get the absolute most secure, absolute most decentralized base layer so that technologies like the Bitcoin Lightning Network could make that trade-off. So at the Lightning, again, on the Bitcoin Lightning Network, they make a different set of trade-offs. They determine that for small payment volumes, it doesn't matter as much if you are decentralized because you're dealing with very small amounts of money. And again, if I woke up one day and found that somebody had found a glitch in the system and, I had double paid for Twizzlers, which again is not even the way Lightning works, but let's hypothesize that someone had found a way to hack a higher layer, and somehow exploit it. Well, so what? It's, $5 or it's $2 or they're reversing a $2 transaction and, something like that. And it's like, but I just don't care about $2. If somebody finds a way to reverse my $2 transaction and I didn't actually get a refund for Twizzlers I didn't buy or whatever, it just doesn't matter because you're dealing with such small amounts of money. So anyway, that's really not the way Lightning works. You can't really do stuff like that. Anyway, I'm just hypothesizing that, maybe if somebody found an exploit or something like that, or some way of, making decentralization, exploiting the fact that Lightning was less decentralized, it doesn't matter because it's a payments network. And the kind of things people worry about on a payments network do not involve decentralization. They involve just security and throughput. So anyway, all that to say, Bitcoin made all of the right choices. The combination of Bitcoin plus the Bitcoin Lightning Network, plus the fact that even independent of the Lightning Network, there's a whole bunch of payment infrastructure with Cash App and Venmo and PayPal and Square and there's a bunch of other ones. I'm forgetting off the top of my head the other ones. But anyway, off the top of my head, so there's tons of payment infrastructure, Visa, MasterCard already built. And so that will, initially be on top of Bitcoin. And then the Lightning Network will replace most of that or all of that as the primary payment network for Bitcoin. And long term, you'll have this beautiful layered money of Bitcoin, just the way you have layered money of every other kind of money, where the base layer is super secure, and in the case of Bitcoin, super decentralized, and then you trade off that decentralization to get scalability on top of that, and that's already working with Lightning. And Lightning, the combination of Bitcoin and Lightning, already has throughput that far exceeds Visa, MasterCard, and all the other payment processors combined, meaning, the technology is already there. It's just a matter of adoption. So hopefully that helps you understand how Bitcoin will work in a world with 1,000 or 10,000 or, a gazillion more users than it has today. The technology is all there to scale to any size. It's just, excuse me, it's just a matter of the fact that it has to be built in layers, just like our current monetary system. And the reason people get tripped up on it is because they don't understand that the current monetary system has layers. Everybody thinks the current monetary system is like one system where when you buy Twizzlers, it's like settling up in the universe. And that's just not true. Your Twizzlers are not really getting all the way purchased for weeks or months. It just looks to you like they are because all of these layers are built on top of Fedwire, which is actually doing the ultimate settlement. And the benefit of Bitcoin is you can get ultimate settlement. You can get ultimate settlement for any amount of money in 10 minutes anywhere in the world. And for small value transactions, that will be done on the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which is already supported by Cash App and Coinbase, and the major apps already have Bitcoin Lightning built in. So you can already pay for stuff with Lightning. And I've done that. You can buy at a Bitcoin coffee shop or whatever. If they have a payment terminal that supports Bitcoin, they can issue a Lightning invoice. You take a picture of it with your phone, or point your phone at it and at the QR code, and it pops up and says, "Hey, do you want to pay this, this invoice for $12 worth of Bitcoin using Cash App?" And you click yes, and boom, it immediately goes through. It's really, really cool, really beautiful technology. And again, the technology is already there. It's just a matter of adoption. So as always, hope this helps. Let me know if you need anything. Thanks.